As the NFL battles concerns over brain injuries among players, new numbers deliver a blow to the sport. Study out today in the Journal of the American Medical Association finds that a degenerative brain condition linked to hits to the head is more common than thought. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, leads to, among other things, memory loss, impaired judgment, and eventually progressive dementia. It can only be diagnosed after death, and symptoms can arise years after a player stops getting concussions. Researchers at the VA Boston healthcare system and the Boston University School of Medicine looked at more than 200 brains donated by families of former football players. They found 87% of all players studied had CTE, and among 111 players who made it to the NFL, 99% had CTE. That's 110 out of 111. And while players further along in their career were more likely to get the disease, even 3 out of 14 high school players, 21%, were also diagnosed with CTE. Although this research does not represent the general football population, the study's authors say these findings highlight the need for action, and as parents weigh the risks of letting their kids play the game, the future of the sport is in question and should be. Dr. Jesse Mez is an assistant professor of neurology at Boston University Medical School and the lead author of the study. He joins me now. Good to see you, Doctor. Thanks so much. Along with Kathleen Grant, whose late husband Peter, a former high school and intramural hockey and football player at Notre Dame, was part of the study. Kathleen, thanks so much for being here. What do we know today, Doctor, as a result of your work and your colleagues' work, that we didn't know yesterday, or at least not as conclusively as we know today?
Right. I think what's striking about the study is that sheer number, that over a short period of time, with limited or no recruitment at all, we were able to accumulate this number of cases.
You're quoted somewhere saying this is not a rare disease. I think that's pretty obvious now. But there are caveats. What are the caveats? That it doesn't represent the whole football playing population, or what are the caveats?
Right. So this is a convenient sample. It's not representative of the general population. We didn't go out and sample the general population of football players.
Well, you can't. If they're living, you can't, right?
Right. Yeah. So in general, the way epidemiological or medical research works is you start with a case report, you move on to a case series like this, and then you can do those epidemiological studies. So,
let me be clear about one more thing. I've used the word concussion a couple of times. You can get CTE for hits to the head that end up being short of a concussion, just repeated blows to the head. Is that not right?
That's what we think. We think that it doesn't really make that much sense that the symptoms you suffer immediately at the time of the hit are at all relevant to that neurodegenerative disease that you have 10, 15, 20 years later.
Kathy, can we talk about your husband? Describe,
Sure.
if you can, the path from playing football and hockey to taking his own life. And I know it was a long and winding one, but give us the essence of it.
It was long and winding, and thank you for inviting me here today, Jim.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Kathy. You're doing great things.
It was a struggle. He played football and hockey in high school, and even younger, suffered 7 major concussions during those games, to the point of being carried off the field at one time, spending 5 days in the hospital, being released, still telling his family that he saw stars, and went to practice the same day.
Same day that he was released.
So he was reconcussed multiple times. He had a history of depression and mania in his family, but in his own life, that was well controlled by medication. 18 months before he took his own life, all the medications seemed to stop working. And we questioned why. We didn't really receive many answers, and I believe there were no answers to be found.
How hard was it? I know your sympathies are primarily, obviously, with your late husband. You have 3 kids, am I right?
I have 3 children.
How hard was it for you and your 3 kids living with him through this?
It was very difficult. At first we thought it was just depression and mania, realizing it was something else, possibly because medication wouldn't work in the last stages. His brothers had met with Dr. McKee He was an athletic director. And
Dr. Mez's colleague you're talking about.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Dr. Ann McKee. And when Pete died, he said, we should donate his brain.
And I want to be clear, by the way, this is not to disparage Pete. He was not a star. He wasn't playing at the highest levels with the fastest and
he was not.
The toughest players.
He was your typical high school intramural player. A lot of hits, a lot of repeat concussions, most likely.
And we should say, by the way, while people may not know your husband's name, a classmate of his at Notre Dame, Dave Dewerson, a star football player, both in college and the pros, took his own life within, I think it was days or something.
It was within a week. They were on the same floor and shared the same dorm at school.
So what now? I mean, this is getting huge play. It leads stories in the Washington Post, the New York Times, all over. What's the consequence of this going to be, or what do you hope the consequence to be?
So ultimately, we need to be able to diagnose this disease in life. Right now, we can only diagnose it after death.
Are we close to that at all? Are we inching towards that point?
Yes, I would say we're more than inching, but we're moving forward. I think the fact that we have as many cases as we do helps us move forward. With each case, we have these two kind of parallel pathways where we clinically interview family members and we do the neuropathological evaluation. And we look at the correlation between clinical and pathological. And we use criteria that we've developed that we think are important for diagnosing.
Is the denial stage, after this thing comes out, and by the way, studies you guys have done and the Concussion Legacy Foundation have done have been incredible, even before today. Is denial a thing of the past? Can anybody who is sane and honest deny the connection between these traumas, these blows to the head and CT? It's very hard to do anymore, isn't it?
I mean, I think so. There's a strong association at this point, but there isn't a causal link yet. Probably because there's two approaches to getting at causation, and from a study design standpoint, we're just not there yet. It takes a long time.
What do you want to say? And by the way, I am totally sympathetic. If I can just say, I'm sympathetic to the pro players, but they're adults. I'm more concerned about people like your husband, high school players and below.
So here, my main point to say about that is the science is real, the research is solid. Protect your kids. Watch if they get hit. Don't let them play football. I love football. And I can't wait for college football to start, but I thank God that my son did not play football, and he's thrilled he didn't play after what happened to his father. So, don't
Notre Dame kid too?
He is.
He's a Notre Dame kid.
He's a Notre Dame kid.
When you say, can it be made? I know this is not in your area of expertise, but I'll ask anyway. And if you don't want to ask, I'll move over and answer. I'll get over here. How can football ever be safe? I mean, the reality is flag football is one thing, but if you're having these kind of contacts, your buddy Chris Nowinski, who's here, says, it's a fallacy to believe you can make a helmet that's really going to swallow the impact of the blow. Is there a point at which that we may reach a point where people have to stand up and say, this is just not safe for people's brains?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that we see these numbers among those who have an overwhelming amount of exposure suggests that the likelihood of developing this disease is probably quite high with sufficient exposure. If perhaps we can develop some sort of marker of who is more likely to develop this disease, then perhaps there are some people who could play at limited levels, but we're not anywhere near that.
But some marker prior to taking hits, you mean potential vulnerability.
Right, potential, like a genetic marker.
What would you like to see on the high school level alone and below? Do you want to see him playing contact football?
No, I run, and in the fall when I run by the 5- and 6-year-olds with helmets on, running into each other, hitting each other for practice, I feel sick. But in the same weekend, I will put on college football and watch a game. So I feel like I'm a contradiction because I don't think football can ever be safe.
Can I add one last thing? When you see this study come out, how much does it mean to you and your family to see the data and that your husband contributed to this conclusion?
I'm thrilled that we could help the research because I think it's very important, and on a personal level it helped answer the question for us, a part of the why. Why did he do it? Why didn't medication help him through depression anymore? but it also helped me realize that there was nothing to look forward to. It is a progressive degenerative disease, and he would never have gotten better. And that has helped us move on.
You're both saving a lot of lives. Congratulations to both of you. Doctor, good to meet you. Thanks so much. Kathy, it's great to see you. I really appreciate your time.